Everyone, welcome back to Signal or Noise, episode 9. Charlie Bilello here. With me, as always, Peter Mallouk. And as always, we're going to help you separate, or try to at least, the signal from the noise. And Peter, I'm excited. We have a really interesting topic today. This is something you and I, questions we get all the time, particularly from young investors. How do I get to that first million? So I know you had a tweet storm about that. I don't know. Can we still call it a tweet storm? It's not Twitter anymore. I think they're calling them posts. So whatever you want to call it, zeets. I don't know. Some people have talked to them about it being a zeet. I don't know. I'm going to stick with tweets for now. But 10 steps to getting to your first $1 million. And here we go. Let's dig right in. Step number 1, save early. The sooner you start, the better. And it doesn't matter how small, just get started, right? If you look at the data, it's really incontrovertible. If you start at age 25, you invest $5,000 a year, and you get an 8% return on that money, you're going to end up with almost $1.3 million. If instead you start at age 40, you're going to have $365,000 by the time you're 65, and if you wait till age 50, you're going to have $135,000. So clearly here, the earlier you start, the better. And is this really where you start out with people? Just try to save something, anything.
Yeah, this is one of the great interesting things to me about investing. You know, when I talk at high schools and colleges and they ask for advice, the number one thing I say is the number one tweet I put out there, which is start early. Because a lot of people go, oh, I just have such a small amount of money, it doesn't make a difference. But the number one thing that benefits investors is time. That's the number one thing. The reason Buffett is one of the richest people in the world is partially he's a great investor. But the biggest thing is he's really old. So his money's had a couple extra chances to double that's really propelled him into this incredibly elite group. Time makes all the difference. So somebody saving a small amount in their 20s and 30s is going to do better than somebody saving older. What's ironic about this, it's one of like many crazy things about life. Like when you're in your 20s and 30s, God, you want to sleep in so bad, but you have to get up because you got a million things to do and you've got kids. When you're in your 60s and 70s, you can't help but get up at 6 in the morning, but you don't have to. Here, you've got this similar thing. When you're young, you have a very small amount of money. You're just starting to work. You're trying to buy a car. You're trying to rent a place or buy a place. You should still save that money because it makes a very big difference. When you're older, you're making a ton of money. You've got plenty to invest. It's too late. It doesn't matter how much money you save. If you're starting when you're 60, it's going to be very, very hard to make that first million. The number one piece of advice you can give a young investor is start systematic savings every paycheck or every time you mow a lawn or whatever, every 2 weeks, every month. Put money in your account, no matter how small it is. That's the first step in becoming a millionaire.
So that brings us to number 2. And I think this is pretty important, especially for young people. Like you say, there's going to be many, I think they call this present bias, and there's many other ways to look at it, but simply we care more about the present than the future, particularly when we're young. We want to enjoy life. There's a lot of things out there that cost money. And so saving and making saving automatic is a way to kind of counteract that. So you almost set it and forget it, and there you go. It's there, and you have to then actively do something to change that, right?
Yeah, if you're young, you're in your 20s or 30s, you want to become a millionaire, automate it. Make it automatic. There's a reason Netflix and Apple, they bill you automatically every month. It's the power of inertia. You just get used to watching that money go out of your paycheck. You have to do something proactive to get out of it. Most people don't do that. Every time, on every paycheck, you should have money automatically going in your 401k or your other investment accounts if you don't have a 401k, and don't even see it coming at you. When you get a raise, increase those contributions. The more you automate it, the more likely you are to stick with it, not even notice it, and get on the path to becoming a millionaire.
And to illustrate that here, what I have in this chart is showing you, well, if you don't automate it, one of the downsides is you just might forget. You might use that money. You might forget about it. So if you invested $5,000 every other year instead of every year, you're going to end up at the age 65 with over $600,000 less money than if you did it every year. Now, as we know, your wages typically go up over time. There's inflation over time. So a better way than just saying, I'm going to do a fixed amount every year, clearly is to do a percentage. And therefore, it will adjust as your income goes higher. You're automatically going to be saving more. And by just doing that versus that static $5,000 contribution, you get another 550,000 by the time you're 65. And at first, these gains you're going to seem very small. And I'm assuming here a modest starting salary of 50,000, which nowadays is not unreasonable for a 25-year-old. And if they're able to save 10% of their paycheck, so start out at $5,000 and just increase that as their wages increase over time, assuming a 3% wage increase, you're going to end up with 1.8 million by the time you're 65, assuming an 8% return. So number 2, make it automatic. Let's go to number 3. If you have a 401k, we've talked about this before, but always invest at least up to the company match. Peter, I know you're always saying this. Hopefully people are listening. This is money that you don't want to be giving away. A lot of people leave that money on the table. Tell me about the company match and how important that is.
Yeah, if you're somebody that's working at a place and you're fortunate enough to have a 401k that has a match, you absolutely need to invest up to a match. Now, what is a match? A match is if you put in, say, 2-3% of your comp, and you wind up putting in, say, 8,000 or 2,000 over the year, the company will match up to a certain amount. So they might match that first $3,000 or $5,000 or $10,000. Well, that's an instant 100% rate of return. There is nothing you or your advisor is going to do to get you a 100% rate of return with the snap of a finger. So sometimes it's tough to have the money to put money in a 401k. I understand that, but scratch and claw your way to at least get to the match.
Right. And so I researched that the average employer match for employers that give this is around 3%. And you could see here the bump up from that previous slide. You get an extra $550,000 over that 40-year period from 25 to 65 just from that employer match. So not a small sum of money that you're leaving on the table if you're not taking advantage of that. So let's go to number 4. Use raises to increase your 401k contribution. And you could see the difference here in the chart here, when going from 1% to 4% to 7% to 10%, each of those step moves higher leads to a huge increase in that ending balance. So it might seem small today, making that minor adjustment, it's going to add up over time to a huge difference in where you're going to be at the age of 65.
Yeah, an easy way to increase your savings is, instead of tightening your belt when you get that raise, to the extent you can take part of that raise and redirect it into investing, it makes it a lot easier to get where you're going.
Awesome. So number 5, this is a big one here, and this is very important for younger people. They're earning less, they have lower incomes, they don't need the deduction as much. They don't have a high of an income, so they're not phased out of the Roth, and they could take advantage of this. Tell me about the Roth IRA, how important this is compared to just putting money in a taxable account and, let's say, investing there.
Yeah, my oldest son, Michael, just started a job a few months ago. He's having a great time. He has got an advisor at Creative now, had his first meeting a few weeks ago, and the first thing the advisor told him is, we're going to use the Roth IRA and the Roth 401k provisions for the exact reasons you talked about. You're in a low-income tax bracket. Let's pay the taxes on your income, put it in the Roth, let it grow tax-free and come out tax-free later. One of the very few things that is almost guaranteed to come out ahead than if you didn't do it.
No question. And here's the differential here over time between that taxable account and the Roth. And you have to assume some tax rate, so I assume 25%. See a huge difference, 1.16 million versus 1.94 million if you invest in the Roth. So where you invest matters, particularly for this vehicle. It's one of the best. What's your thoughts, Peter, on the Roth 401k? So more and more companies are now offering that. People often ask me, and a lot of that versus the traditional 401k. And a lot of people will say, well, which one is better? Should I do one or the other? And what I tell them is not really the right answer, because you have to predict what the future tax rate is going to be. So to the extent possible, and if you want to minimize regret, because we can't predict the future, I don't personally believe tax rates will be lower in the future, but maybe that's wishful thinking. But is it a bad idea to maybe split the difference and do half and half, or hedge your bet that way? Or would you go all in one or the other?
I don't know that Congress did the American public any favors here. 401ks were complicated enough, and then they add this provision, and people go, okay, what should I do? And the answer for every single person asked the question is, it depends. I mean,
Yeah.
why are we doing this to the American public? And it really has to do with what your tax bracket is now versus your anticipated tax bracket in retirement, which is partially what you're earning now versus what your income will be in retirement, and partially, Charlie, what you brought up, which is what our tax bracket's going to be. There is no right answer. It's worth a 10-minute conversation with your CPA or financial advisor, because with a couple of facts, the probability can really move in your favor to go one way or the other.
Yeah, I think just having that flexibility, putting a little bit in both, it gives people that optionality where it minimizes that regret, let's say, in the future, because you don't know which way it's going to go. But there are clearly benefits to the Roth, and the Roth 401k has some of those benefits as well. So to not take advantage of that, I think, would not be a good idea. So maybe splitting the difference, that's my personal approach. But for everyone, that's different. That's going to be different. So let's go to number 6. And this could have been number 1 in terms of importance. Before you start saving, you have to get rid of high interest rate debt. And number 6, as you say, pay down highest interest rate debt first. And that usually means, as you know, credit cards. And where are credit card rates today? The highest rates they've ever been, over 20% on average. So is there anything more important than paying down credit cards? That's only if you could find some magical investment that's going to guarantee you over a 20% return. I don't know of that. So therefore, this should be number 1 in terms of prioritization, even though it's number 6 on your list.
I mean, unless you can get that 100% match in the 401k, that's the one thing that could work out better. But the issue with credit card debt is that it's the highest interest debt and it compounds against you. So if you don't get in front of it, you can really find yourself with a financial catastrophe. So before you go doing Roth IRAs or regular investment accounts or regular 401k contribution or saving your emergency reserve even, pay down the credit card debt. You've got to get that under control. Try to live paycheck to paycheck so you don't wind up in a situation where this can get away from you. This is the number 1 cause of bankruptcies is credit card debt. I think it's the number 1 reason that people don't become financially independent. And, our topic is how to become a millionaire. Get that first million. And if you want to make sure you don't get it, carry credit card debt. You've got to find a way to get this under control to be able to have a chance.
Yeah, and this stat always surprises me, even though it shouldn't. The fact that, and I ran the numbers in a spreadsheet saying if you have this $10,000 in credit card debt, which is unfortunately not unusual these days. I think the average is approaching that for people who don't pay off their balances. And assuming they make the minimum payment, which for a lot of people, that's what they're doing, it takes a long time to pay back that debt. It takes almost 30 years. And over that 30-year period, you're paying way more in interest than the original balance. You're paying over $16,000 in interest as you pay that down. And you contrast that with someone who doesn't have that debt, who's a net saver, a net investor, and you look at the growth of just $10,000 over that same almost 30-year period, you almost get to $100,000. And these numbers compound with time. So it's something that is obvious. It's something that people talk about. It's not, no one's saying it's easy, but it's something that you have to prioritize and try to tackle that before anything else. Yeah. So let's go to number 7, mental accounting tricks. And this is a good one because sometimes things go your way, money comes your way, you get a bonus, you get a tax refund, you get a gift or inheritance. And of course you want to spend some of that, and I think that's fine. But if you save a portion of that, the gains over time will be, I think, much higher than you would think. So the average tax refund, I ran the numbers here, is around $3,000 a year. So let's say you take that refund, it's found money, and let's say you don't need it, and you're ready or investing your 401k, your Roth IRAs, and you just add that to your investments, and you compound that over time, you're up to $777,000 by the time you're 65, but just taking that refund. So how often do you talk to clients when they get this type of, this isn't a windfall, this is a few $1,000s, but when they get that, to just try to be disciplined and save a portion of it?
Yeah, mental accounting usually works against people. So typically mental accounting is you're sitting in Vegas and you're having one of those days where you're winning And you go, oh, I'm just going to keep gambling because it's the house's money. Well, in reality, it's your money, right? It's not the house's money. People feel the same way about a tax refund. They treat all their money a certain way, and then they get a tax refund. They go, oh, I'm going to go on a vacation with it because it's free money. It's not free money. It was your money. You just accidentally paid it to the IRS in a day. You got bad tax advice. You paid too much taxes. So here, take mental accounting and make it work for you. Hey, this is found money. It's outside of my budget. Let me contribute that towards my investments. Like you said, the average refund's $3,000. Some people it's more, some people it's less. If you can get in the habit of putting that away over time, big dollars, well on your path to becoming a millionaire.
It's certainly going to help. So let's go to number 8. And this one, I think it is a no-brainer, but for some people, life changes. It becomes harder, but for other people, they should definitely pay attention to this. Number 8 is buy a reasonable house. And by reasonable house, I think you're saying something you can afford, not stretching, not reaching enough where you can still save, right, and invest, and try to stay there, which I think there's an understated cost of switching homes that people don't often talk about. It's not just the real estate commissions and the transaction fees. It's also that when you're in that new home, you're going to go out and spend money to refurnish it and all the other things that come with that. So just running the numbers here, and it's hard to quantify this. I found a decent gap here from someone who stayed in their home versus someone that moved every few years. But is this something, Peter, where obviously it all depends, but it's something that as best you can, you should try to plan to stay in a home. Let's say this, I assume moving every 5 years, but at least assume you're going to try to live in a home for 10 years or longer. Otherwise, those costs are going to eat into the appreciation in your house.
There's nothing more misunderstood in personal finance than your primary residence. Because a lot of people, their experience is I bought a house and then I sold it later and I made a lot of money. And that's because you're paying down a mortgage over time and because homes appreciate at a few percent a year generally. And I know people in Nashville and Austin and Florida are laughing right now where they're double-digit appreciation, but normally it's a couple percent per year and sometimes nothing for long periods of time. And so people think it works great, but what they don't realize is that the cost of doing that relative to other things. The home while you're in it is taking money away from you, maintenance, insurance, taxes. So you want to live in a home you can afford. You don't want to overstretch. But people definitely don't understand the cost of switching homes because there's the commission to sell, there's the commission to buy, there's all the things you do to prep for the sale of your house, touch up the paint in a room, fix the landscaping. There's all the things you do in the new home. Oh, I need new furniture now. I need new painting on the wall. None of that stuff gets priced into people's calculations on how they made out. If you can find a good home and you can stay there for 10, 15 years, move a couple times in your life. And again, we're giving advice to young people here. If you can find a way to live in a couple of homes over your life instead of 6 or 7, that is definitely going to increase the probability that you're going to get your first $1 million faster.
Absolutely. So number 9, this is obviously one of the most important ones, and you got to show the numbers to people because it can feel like, especially today with cash yields pretty high, we're over 5%, that why should I take any more risk? Why should I be in the stock market? But your rule number 9 is invest in stocks over bonds, over CDs, and over cash. And stocks are more likely to double your wealth. What I'm showing here is that rule of 72. Stocks, it takes 7.5 years. Bonds on average, 15.7 years. Cash, over 20 years. And you can see the differential in returns, almost 10% for stocks, 5% for bonds, and 3% for cash. And this is not every year, Peter, and this is the difficulty with this. We saw this in 2022 when cash did better than anything. But if you look at most 10-year periods and every 20-year period, you're looking at higher stock returns, and oftentimes over a 30-year period, pretty much always stocks have outperformed these investments. So is it just aligning with the probabilities at the end of the day?
Yeah, it's all probabilities, and the probabilities move in your favor over time. So if you're that 20-something, 30-something-year-old, even 40-something-year-old, you're trying to get to that first $1 million. If we are buying bonds, well, the probability you're going to have a positive return in any given year is around 90+%. If you buy stocks, it's only 75%. But if we stretch it out over time, if you're in the stock market for 5 years, the odds are way over 90% that you're going to have a positive return. Where somebody young, they don't have 5 years, they've got 25, 35 years. If you are young and you put your money in stocks, you should see your money double every 7 years. If you put them in bonds, it's about every 15 years. So we're trying to get that first $1 million, start buying stocks. Ignore what happens with the ups and downs of the market. Be an owner, don't be a lender. People own bonds to protect against the downside when they're near withdrawing from their portfolio, or when they're so wealthy they don't care about accumulating more wealth. They care about portfolio stability. If you're young, don't worry about that stuff. Own stocks for the long run. It'll almost certainly work out for you. Your money will double much quicker, much clearer path to becoming a millionaire.
Okay, number 10, try and live a healthy lifestyle. I'm not going to let you take this one, Peter. I know you talk a lot about it. There's been so many studies in recent years showing the benefits of not just your well-being, but financial benefits of living a healthier lifestyle. Talk me through how important this is to get to that first million.
Well, we all know that people have all kinds of problems, but somebody with a serious health problem only has one. That's all they could focus on all the time. And all we're talking about is making that first $1 million, becoming financially independent. But along the way, you have to take care of yourself so that you can make the living and then enjoy the living, right? If you're not healthy, none of this other stuff is going to matter. We also know that people that live a healthier lifestyle pay less in medical costs, pay less to live around the home. They tend to work more day. They tend to have a better work-life balance because they're able to have a higher earning power. There's every reason in the world to take care of yourself. You can't just look at money. You start to absorb a lot of time, a lot of stress, a lot of energy. Working 3 jobs when you don't need to, trying to make your first million is not wise. Right? Do all the things that we talked about to make that first million and take care of yourself along the way so you can continue to get there and enjoy it when you do.
Yeah. So in many ways, we can even put this before the credit card debt. Right. If you don't have your health, you have nothing. So
there's no more important investment than yourself. I mean, that you have to make yourself the number one investment.
Absolutely. Okay. There you have it. 10 steps to get to your first million. Let's move on to the psychology of Social Security. So, Peter, as you know, there's theory when it comes to financial markets, when it comes to investing, when it comes to saving, when it comes to Social Security, and then there's practice, and there's the way people feel about things and the psychology of things. And you're dealing with this every day and talking to clients. You see this. You can present the data, you can present the evidence, and some people might appreciate that, but other people might not. So this was an interesting study that just came out talking about Social Security. But first, a little background. You can start collecting Social Security at the earliest at age 62. But if you do so, you're only going to get 70% of the benefit. If you wait to 67, they call that full retirement age, you'll get 100%. And if you wait to 70, the latest age, you'll get 124% of the benefit. So if you wait, you'll get more. And what economists have showed is that for most people, not everyone, obviously, if you're in poor health and there's a reason to collect early, that's a separate category. But for most people, they would benefit by waiting, and the more you delay, the more you benefit. Now, here's where it gets interesting. What we have is this chart here showing you the breakdown in when people take that Social Security. As you can see, 29% take it at age 62. Over 50% take it before that full retirement age. Very few people are waiting to 70 and later. And this is the number, this is the data, this is the evidence. But what is the psychology behind it? Well, this is what this study from the MBER looked at. They said, well, yes, you're getting all this extra money if you live longer, but people aren't necessarily thinking about that. What they're more focused on is 2 things. Number one, this psychological ownership idea where they feel, I earned this money, I worked for it so hard, so long, and the more they felt this way, the more they felt that this is mine, the more they wanted to claim it early and not leave it on the table. And number 2, and this was the most important factor, was this concept of loss aversion. And so we're all familiar with that, but here they're saying, well, I don't want to die early and leave that money on the table, all this money that I worked for. That to them was outweighed maybe the positive expectancy of future benefits. So what's your thinking here in terms of how do you approach this with a client or speaking with someone in terms of not just Social Security, but anything when we all have these psychological impulses that we have, and we're human beings through no fault of our own, these biases that might outweigh what's actually in our best interest. How do you square the two with clients?
Well, I think all of that's really relevant. I think there's also a lot of Americans that they can't afford to wait. Right, they don't have enough money to do what they want to do, and they have to take it. I mean, they're just most Americans don't have enough saved for retirement, and so there's that big factor. But I do think that loss aversion is the biggest part of this. So even if you have somebody who's in pretty good shape, this idea that wait a second, if I wait 5, 6, 7 years to get this higher payout, but I don't survive that, and I get nothing after paying into this for forever, I don't care where the statistics are. Give me the money. And I see that unless somebody has a lot of independent wealth, then they're willing to. The irony of it is those are the people that are willing to wait.
They don't need it. They won't end
Right.
up needing it anyway, right? Because
That's
the
right.
idea of waiting is, well, if you it's risk management. If you live into your late 80s or 90s, then you're covered more if you delay that payment because you're getting a higher payment. But you're right. It's what the fascinating thing, the last point on this is that when they actually showed them the data, they showed the people the numbers, they thought that would help with them making a better decision. It actually had the opposite effect because people were so focused on getting nothing had they die early that they're not thinking about the bigger numbers had they lived longer. They were so focused on that part of things. So I think this is just inevitable when you're dealing with human beings. There's no right or wrong answer in terms of you have to be able to sleep at night. So for me, if I'm talking to someone, it won't really matter one way or another, and they're going to be nervous about it if they don't claim it early or one way or another, and it doesn't make much of a difference, then do what helps you sleep at night, even though it might not be, assuming they have all of the knowledge and data and evidence, do what helps you sleep at night, because getting back to your health, that's most important.
Right.
And if you're not going to be feeling good about it, what difference does it make? So let's
It
go
is
to
amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much health comes into all of this. We were talking about the top ways to become a millionaire. Obviously it doesn't matter if you're not healthy. Social Security, a big part of the decision is your health. Even the Roth conversion we were talking about, how much time is, I mean, and then everything about investing is usually about financial independence, which the premise of is that you're doing well enough to enjoy your financial independence. And so it's such a big part of enjoying life. And it's also everyone's biggest contingent liability. If you're not healthy, that's your biggest expense, is the care in the home or the supplemental medical care or whatever it is that you need. It's, health really permeates all the discussion around wealth on some level or another.
No question. And we didn't talk about this in the healthcare section, but HSAs are definitely something similar to a Roth, but even better because you're getting that upfront deduction and it grows tax-free. And if you're young and healthy, probably not thinking about it, but that's the time to let that grow and compound when you're probably going to need it when you get older. So just an additional one there. You could put that as a 10A in the 10 steps to get to a million. So summer reading, Peter. Summer's coming to a close here, but we got a few books that people should check out. I'm going to start another book by David Grann. This is probably the best book I read this year, called The Wager. Yes, it's just exceptional. Nonfiction book, but it reads like a story. It's a real page turner. It's about this British military exhibition in the 18th century, so 1700s, and they're at war at the time with Spain. There's a war, it's called the War of Jenkins' Ear. There's a whole story about that in there. You can read about that. It's pretty interesting as well. But they send out this fleet of ships to go out and try to find Spanish ships to attack and steal their gold and silver, essentially. It's a crazy idea. And they round up thousands of people because no one wants to be on these ships because it's like a death sentence at the time. You're probably not coming back. They're actually kidnapping people to bring on the ships. And yes, most of them don't come back. But one of the boats in the fleet, called the Wager, ends up getting shipwrecked on the island, on an island in Cape Horn, actually in Patagonia, in South America. And for months they're stranded there. They have to find their way out. So it's all about that, the mutiny that goes on. And I'm not giving anything away because they say it early in the book, but some of them do make it back. And then there's a debate about what actually transpired. There's a few different versions, and they have to kind of adjudicate that. So really interesting one. Definitely check it out. Exceptional writing, and I don't know if you call it a beach read, but for me, this is the type of book that I love. So, Peter, I know you got an
It sounds cool enough that I might just be able to wait for the movie. Is that going to get turned into a movie?
It could be. Well, it's the same author of The Flower Moon, so it definitely could be could become a movie. So, Peter, you got this book here, Essentialism. I actually read it a few years ago. I loved it. Tell me about why you like it, why you recommend it.
I mean, I have this natural bent anyway, but the book is about just simplifying your life and keeping, garbage out of your mind and off of your desk and out of your inbox and really focusing on the things that matter the most. I like this so much that I've recommended to a few friends, and we've also got Greg, the author, coming out to our Connect event, creative planning clients. We have an event.
There we go. Yep.
Yeah, we have an event every
Few
year
weeks.
where we have a bunch of speakers, usually some top TED Talk speakers. But we'll have about a dozen speakers, and Greg is going to be one of them in September, and I think people will enjoy him. He's got a great message.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely looking forward to that. Looking forward to Magic Johnson as well, and I'm glad that I'm speaking before him. So thank you for that. So let's end with signal or noise here. We got a topic, and I'm going to go through it. It's a little bit quantitative, but a lot of people within the investment industry are talking about it, this thing called the equity risk premium. There's a million different ways to measure it, but essentially it's just inverting the price to earnings ratio, taking an earnings yield and comparing that yield with a 10-year treasury bond. And today it's at the lowest levels it's been in some time. And a lot of people are saying this is reason for concern, reason for caution. And that may be the case. It may not be the case. So what do I have to do? Went back and tested it. Is there any signal to the equity risk premium? I went back to 1928, looking at this S&P 500 earnings yield, comparing it to the 10-year treasury yield. And what I found is almost a zero correlation. So a little bit of a correlation, a very low R squared, which means that the forward returns for the S&P 500 after a high earnings yield or a high equity risk premium or a low equity risk premium, you couldn't decipher one way or another. And the interesting thing in this chart by The Economist left off the period before 2006, but is that we had the whole decade of the 1980s essentially with a negative equity risk premium. So below where we are today. You know what happened after that. Yeah. Stocks had one of their best runs ever. And so what's really interesting about this is if you just take out that minus 10-year treasury yields, you actually get a much better signal. Just looking at valuations gives you no certainty at all, but there is a lower probability of high future returns when you have high valuations and vice versa. So stocks were very cheap, as you know, in the early 1980s, and it didn't matter that bond yields were very high. They did extremely well over the next 20 years. And today, stocks are not very cheap. Bonds are kind of average yields, but we know they've been rising, and people are trying to draw some signal out of this. I would caution against that for sure. There's so many things that you can look at in the equity market. This is not something that's, to me, is predictive whatsoever. And when people try to say that, but it is, it should make sense, what I say is go to the extreme. Go to the periods where U.S. interest rates were at their lowest point ever. Or if we look at Europe, they had negative interest rates. Well, how do you calculate something that like that? Does that mean that equity valuations should be extremely high and stocks should do extremely well just because bonds are crazily priced? No, that doesn't make sense whatsoever, and no one would argue that. So looking at a bond yield and telling you what stocks should do in the future isn't a good thing for investors to focus on. I don't know if you have anything to add by that.
I'm not surprised that it's noise. I'm surprised at how there's nothing there. I mean, that actually surprises me that when you tested it, Charlie, that basically the conclusion is nothing. I mean, that's a bit surprising, but
here's the thing.
Noise.
During certain cycles, it had something, right? But that's the truth for most indicators. If you just stretch out the time and then you realize it's noise. So something could look very much like a signal because, in the short time period you're in, it's working, right? Like last year we talked about don't fight the Fed, right? That to a lot of people, that was a signal. And then all of a sudden this year, what happened? It's not working anymore. Well, right. If you stretch out the time period, you find that, that wasn't really unusual, that fighting the Fed is just fine and has been fine for investors. So with that, another one, people are going to be waiting for us to do something that has more of a signal. I'll try to do that maybe for the Connect conference, but a lot of noise, and we're here to help you separate the signal from the noise. Peter, we're going to end it right there. For more content, please subscribe to the channel, give us a review. If you're listening to this on YouTube, we also have a podcast version. You could go to iTunes, Google Podcast, Spotify, all of the major platforms. So check us out there as well. And we'll see you next time on Signal or Noise.